The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Hello, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio with another installment of Global Alert News, a weekly update to try to cover some of what's unfolding on the planet. There's simply far too much to begin to really cover any large percentage of it, but we can try to cover the major aspects. And again, by covering the priority issues, if one is on a boat that's sinking, you have certain priorities, and you need to take care of those priorities, and nothing else at that point matters. And that's the situation that we're all in. So my goal with Global Alert News is to try to cover the most important issues in some sort of a context that helps to make sense of it all. And it's not an easy equation to paint a clear picture because there's so many pieces to the puzzle. But the goal is to try. And for all of us that are busy with life's normal challenges and functions, it's imperative during the course of each day that we remember to look at the horizon, that we remember to take a look out of the rabbit hole, because if we don't, we have no chance. And our society is structured in a way to try to ensure that no one looks out of the rabbit hole, and few are. This broadcast, KQMS in Northern California, airs Saturday mornings from 6 to 7 a.m. Covers a very wide area. I'm grateful to KQMS for their help with getting the word out to those that might not otherwise hear it. And it's a commercial-free hour because I simply don't want to taint the message. And any breaking up of this data with commercial broadcast simply muddies the water. I'm not willing to do that. There's too little time left in our equation, too little sand left in the hourglass, if you will. I'm recording this show early this week because of station requirements and with the holiday, everybody's in a tough situation. So if any late breaking news happens in the latter part of the week, I'm sorry if I can't cover that here, but there's more than enough to cover right now. Can't keep up. Can't keep up with breaking events as planet Earth remains under siege from so many directions. It's impossible to quantify the damage. It's absolutely impossible. And so many are completely asleep at the wheel. Completely. Reality is not going to seem real, the reality that's unfolding, until it happens, until the brick hits you in the head. Our paradigm is going to overturn soon. It's starting to overturn now. And to the vast, vast, vast majority, that's not going to seem real until it happens. It will come like a tornado in the night. Literally. Think about that. While you're going about your life with your iPhones, caught in traffic, whatever it is you're doing, this paradigm is not going to be the same much longer. The red flags are absolutely everywhere. Denial won't save you. No question. The walls are closing in. We'll cover a lot of the factors today. I just returned from a trip to San Francisco, a very fast overnight trip, to meet with some band members there from 3 different bands that are conscious of the bigger picture. Very conscious. I was impressed with them and was able to meet with one of the heads of the 3 bands and supplied data to them, and they'll be touring the country now and perhaps later the world, hopefully starting spot fires of awareness on the climate engineering issue, which affects every single one of us, which affects the planet's ability to support life. And if it's not dealt with, nothing else will matter soon. So trying to digest what I saw in San Francisco as an example of what I just went over of all the people that are completely distracted in their lives. San Francisco is a very, very good example of that. A lot of affluence there, a lot of people who live in bubbles, who think somehow their little world won't be disturbed. But it will. It absolutely will. And as they race around in their new BMWs, and I don't want to pick on any particular region, if you will, but I just came from there and it was hard not to see it. Caught in traffic with everybody on their iPhones and unbelievable amounts of traffic. And who could think that that could go on? When I was very young, I had these thoughts, how could this continue? How could it possibly continue? Stripping the planet of its resources and building all this stuff and pumping out this greenhouse gas and contaminating everything everywhere. How could that go on? And San Francisco is a good example in it. People can't imagine that anything could change because there's all this construction going on, new high-rises going up, new vehicles everywhere because, of course, the vehicles are very easy to buy with nothing down and no payments for who knows how long. And, the rest that goes with the now just sign your name and drive a new car home policies. But the example that exists there of people who feel that they are in some sort of protected bubble from whatever's going on around the world, they're going to be in for a hell of a shock very soon. In fact, many times I've considered what I might have been able to do if I could go back in time, knowing what I have learned in the last decade and a half. If I could go back in time, what difference might I have been able to make if I could have started this mission sooner? But I've had to face the reality that I don't think I would have been able to make any more difference sooner because the events had to unfold. They had to unfold. The only thing that will wake most people up is facing reality as it falls into their lap. They won't face it otherwise. The vast majority will not face reality until it hits them in the head like a brick. That's a simple fact. And even now, even at this late date, with so many walls crumbling around us, what do we see on the political theater, mainstream media? It's an absolute circus of insanity. And we look at the deliberate and ongoing attempt at mass distraction designed to create maximum division, the artificial created conflict between Democrats and Republicans as if there's really a difference. And how long has this gone on? And how long will it take for the public to figure out this is all theater, designed by those at the top to keep a population divided, feuding, and confused? And that's exactly what it's done. Again, the Democrat-Republican debate, the conservative-liberal debate, the black-white debate, police violence, issues that have so many aspects to them. In regard to for example, the police violence situation, which we do see a lot of. We do. There's no question. In fact, I was astounded to see after 13 months the video that was just released of the black man being gunned down in the streets of Chicago with 16 shots fired into him for no good reason. And that's horrible. That's horrible. But at the same time, we don't see a lot of instances where peace officers are hurt and they perhaps tried to show restraint and it cost them maybe their lives. That happens too. It does happen. So I'm certainly not condoning the unfortunately large number of, or percentage of peace officers that seem to be losing control in certain aspects, but at the same time, I know there's a lot of great peace officers out there that suffer the consequences of what some of the bad ones do. And the system is corrupt. I don't deny that. The system is horribly corrupt. And in general, it's a cancer. But there are good peace officers. Absolutely are. And when we allow the media to create this further division, when people protest this horrible crime of this black man being gunned down in the streets of Chicago, or what happened at some of the other cities in the U.S. where such things occurred, when people go out and start to destroy infrastructure and cars and materials, and they start to riot and loot and pillage, that's exactly the wrong thing to do. That's exactly what those in power want the population to do? To further fuel the division and the conflict, to make it easier for them to do what they're doing on the bigger picture and have nobody notice. To have nobody notice what's happening. Same thing with the immigrant situation, where we have this now artificial debate set up. It's very intricately constructed. That certain Democrats are saying, yes, let them all in. And the feud with the Republican Party that is saying, no, don't let any of them in. And certainly there's concerns about opening the doors to everyone. I'm not advocating that at all, but I'm asking for everyone to remember who created these massive immigrant problems. Who was the most responsible for creating these issues? Why isn't that brought up? When the U.S. military and NATO bombs the hell out of other countries without just cause, and no matter what the cause, or no matter what the justification, to bomb the infrastructure of civilians, how could that possibly be justified? And I don't know how many might remember when Madeleine Albright was asked if she thought it was worth the sanctions on Iraq, that are estimated to have killed 500,000 children, innocent children. What did she say? She thought, and she said, yes, I think it was worth it. What is wrong with these people? They're clearly wired in a way that is dark and incredibly disturbing. But that's what we have. That's the system. That's who runs the system. That's who the system is built from. And so we have the same sort of components in mainstream media, again, controlled by those at the top, that are trying to fuel these conflicts, these divisions from all these separate directions. Why? To distract us. Again, from religious divides, abortion, the police violence, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, all these separate divisive issues which we see in the media over and over and over are designed to distract you from the fact that your planet is imploding, that the reality you've known is not going to be around much longer, the environment's collapsing, and people's ambivalence to the fact that we live on a very miraculous planet. It's unimaginably miraculous that it's supported life here, and we've treated it so horrifically, it's astounding any of us are even alive at this point. But all this media circus, the political theater, the Donald Trumps, the Ben Carsons, the rest of the candidates, Clinton, they're all part of the same power structure, all of them. It's very convincing that they're different, and that somehow if you elect this one or that one, something will change. It's not going to change. They're simply puppets in the play. And the population's been all too willing to go along with the distraction and the lies. I know this firsthand. Many listening, I know this firsthand. How many people do each of us know that don't want the facts, period? They don't want to know. They've already made up their mind. Don't bother them with the facts. And no matter how many facts you throw at them, they will always revert back to their denial, because that feels good for them, because they don't have the courage to face facts, period. And somehow they think that by not facing facts, they'll be able to hide from reality. Not the case. Not going to happen for much longer. How about a few headlines, briefly, from mainstream media this week? While the walls are collapsing around the globe, on all the issues we've covered in and out during the weeks, and happening much more rapidly now, and I'll get to some of those dire new headlines on environmental implosion in a few moments. But just 4 headlines from this week's mainstream media. Again, this is Fox, CNN, and MSNBC. 3 sides to a coin, if that can be, because they're all run by the same people in the end. How about this headline? Obama gives medals of freedom. Who is he to give a medal for anything? And isn't it unimaginable that Obama could have been given the Nobel Peace Prize? How unimaginably hypocritical is that? We have this person who's been a part of the power structure that's killed who knows how many lives, who knows how many, again, as I've mentioned before, wedding parties or innocent civilians are killed in foreign countries. In one case, again, 50 people in a wedding party killed. Oops, mistake. And who is he to give a Medal of Freedom, and who is he to have the Nobel Peace Prize? Unimaginable hypocrisy. No different for the Bushes or the Clintons or all the rest. They're all the same. So I'm not picking on any one party. They're all the same. Another headline, mainstream media. Meteorologists wearing the same dress. Who cares? Can you imagine that as a headline when we have massive marine ecosystem die-off? We have all-time record low ice in the Arctic right now, by the way, right now. Has anybody seen a headline on that one? Oh, by the way, the Arctic ice is at all-time record lows? No, no headline. Think about that. While so many people think that the power structure is still pushing to try to tell you how bad the warming is, they're not. That's a lie. No longer. They're simply trying to hide it. Yes, there's some trying to capitalize off the warming. There always is. Always disaster capitalists. But while we have things like this going on, total unfolding cataclysms on our planet, we have headlines like Obama gives medals of freedom and meteorologists wearing the same dress. That's what we're given from mainstream media. Two more headlines. The world's hottest model is, I don't know, the headline doesn't finish, but as if that matters. And finally, we have Dorothy's, quote, Oz dress sells for $1.56 million. That's what mainstream media gives us. While all hell is breaking loose around the planet, well, we're probably heading toward World War III. On the imploding economy, here's some real headlines. Iron ore bust getting worse. Price heading toward the 30s. That's a rock bottom. Bankruptcies coming. Another headline. German manufacturing in April shrinks at fastest pace in 3 years. Any notion that the economy is expanding is a complete and total lie. A lot of people who have used their homes for ATM machines for years, and that's been carefully orchestrated by the power structure so that the population would be well-fed and happy and completely oblivious to what's happening around them. It's exactly the scenario we have. People don't want to wake up. And all the institutions are participating in that, by the way, from the environmental institutions that are supposedly sounding the alarm, which couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to the most dire issues. And the hypocrisy from the environmentalist community is, I don't have the words for it. I really don't. And I am an environmentalist. I am. I absolutely am. I've always cared completely about the environment because no environment, no people. How simple is that? But the so-called environmentalists, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, World Wildlife Federation, and the rest are absolutely spineless organizations that are simply concerned about their 501c3s. And we've communicated, our attorneys team has communicated with some from some of those groups to try to get them to help us in our efforts with filing suit. They don't want anything to do with this. Nothing. Because it could disturb their bubble. What kind of hypocrisy is that? And the same goes with every spiritual institution we've spoken to so far. There are some exceptions. There's a few pastors that are exceptions. I've done some radio shows for a few Christian pastors that are facing this issue head on, and I salute them. But I'm not picking on any particular belief system either. I'm just saying as a whole, total unwillingness to face the unfolding cataclysm of climate engineering. That's what I'm speaking about here. And that simply is a direct contradiction to all belief systems. All major traditions require their followers to be good stewards of the planet, to protect the environment. And yet, that is not the case. That's not being done, in fact, in so many cases. There are some of these spiritual institutions willing to face the climate change issue, but they're not willing to acknowledge the biggest elephant in the room, global climate engineering, the single most destructive environmental factor on the planet for decades. And so many are unwilling to face it, completely unwilling. So we have environmental groups and spiritual institutions not willing to face this real and present danger of global climate engineering. It's contaminating the entire planet. Plenty of hypocrisy to go around. No shortage of it. Another headline we're not being told. Again, German manufacturing in April shrinks at fastest pace in 3 years. Oil jobs lost, 250,000 and counting. Texas likely to see massive layoffs soon. The wheels are coming off the train. Period. If you can't see it, you're not looking very hard. It's happening now. And Texas is the tip of the iceberg. As industrial civilization starts to grind to a halt, it will get ever more disruptive in our current paradigm. It will affect us in ways that most can't imagine yet. And it's here. It's unfolding now. You can't see it yet, you will. Another headline, Brazil job losses accelerated during October, 1.4 million in 12 months. It's happening all over the globe. We're not being told, and every effort has been made and is being made to keep the U.S. population dumbed down and in the dark as long as possible. And again, the U.S. population and other populations around the globe have been all too willing to stay in that dark place. We need to wake up and turn the light on now while there's still something left to save. Final headline, HSBC to cut 2,000 jobs in commercial bank unit. How good can the economy really be? That's a complete lie. Economy has always been a card house. The pyramid scheme has been kept going an unimaginably long time, but it is now reaching its end. As an example I've used before, industrialized society has always been a snake eating its own tail. And we have examples of this on a smaller scale. Easter Island, stunning example. Island paradise with some 16 million fruit-bearing palm trees. A civilization that could have lived with incredibly conducive conditions for harmony, if you will. But they focused on idols, much as our society does now. They started to build massive statues. Most people have seen Easter Island, the big, massive statues of heads that face out toward the sea. Very intriguing story. I've read a fair amount on this issue. They began to cut down the palm trees to roll these statues around and continue building idols, if you will. Just as modern society does with its new cars and everything else, all this material lust. What happened in the end? The whole island collapsed. What was the islander who cut down the last palm tree thinking when he cut that down? Was he even considering what happened? They cut every single palm tree down on the entire island, stripping it bare. Their society collapsed and cannibalism ensued. We are Easter Island on a massive scale. Absolutely no difference, just on a larger scale. Another headline, systemic breakdown, collapse, and unsustainability. Under that category, signs of a dying society is the headline. Subtitle, while Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning and John Kiriakou, for those who don't know who John Kiriakou is, he was the whistleblower for the torture programs in the U.S. So all these three individuals are vilified for revealing vital information about spying and bombing and torture. A man who conspired with Goldman Sachs to make billions of dollars off the planned failure of subprime mortgages was honored by New York University for his, quote, outstanding contributions to society. Can you imagine that hypocrisy? The whistleblowers who sacrificed everything to tell the truth for the common good are vilified, prosecuted, incarcerated, and even John Kiriakou, again, blew the whistle on the illegal and completely immoral torture programs in the U.S., and who was the only one to go to prison? John Kiriakou. And Bradley Manning, or Chelsea Manning, or whatever name you want to use. How much did he sacrifice? And the same with Snowden. And yet, we have a banker who schemed to strip society of countless billions, being honored by New York State University for his, quote, outstanding contributions to society. What type of darkness is unfolded under our whole planet that this can happen? That the mighty dollar is so worshipped that those who manage to make an empire of dollars, if you will, they're honored as if they're somehow outstanding members of society, which couldn't be further from the truth. This paradigm is not going to last. And those who again are buying into this, who are going along with the program, going along with the herd because they want their new Lexus or their new Mercedes or their new BMW. We're about to hit the wall. We're through the guardrail. We're going to the bottom of the canyon. Putting on the brakes now won't matter. It's too late. It's too late for that. I don't claim to know the final outcome. Who could know? Who could know that? I'm simply saying, if we compare society to a car going 100 miles an hour, 10 feet from impact into a concrete wall, you can say with certainty it's going to hit and it's going to be catastrophic. And that's exactly where we're at. When there's not enough to go around, the law of the jungle will ensue. World War III is an ever greater immediate risk as the walls close in from every direction. They're closing in from absolutely every direction. We have biosphere collapse, we have fisheries collapsing, salmon fisheries are collapsing, cod fisheries are collapsing, we have crops collapsing around the globe. From every direction, the paradigm we have known is disintegrating. It's absolutely disintegrating. And again, for those, and I know there's still those who listen, this is a broadcast from Northern California that reaches a fair amount of people. It's a large broadcast, and I know there's many people listening that probably have listened to enough mainstream media where they won't hear anything else. They won't hear what I'm trying to say. And that's not my business. My business is to try to deliver what the data dictates. What people do with it is their choice. If they choose not to investigate, and that's all I'm asking, for people to investigate what I'm saying, to clear the lens. You're looking through a colored lens if you don't see what's unfolding right now. I'm asking you to clear that lens. Wipe the slate clean and look again. Investigate again. And for those who think that those in power are not crazy enough to start World War III or to do the other things that we know are happening, like climate engineering, then I ask you to consider the basics that we know are happening. Nuclear power. We have Fukushima that, again, may kill us all. I think there's other factors that will kick into play even before Fukushima can get to us. They're unfolding now. Again, our ozone layer is disintegrating from climate engineering. Hydrological cycle is completely destroyed. I'll get into some of the weather issues in a moment. But nuclear power alone, with Fukushima, a nuclear volcano with no end in sight, no technology to fix it, and no media coverage of this fact, it's contaminating the entire planet as we speak, and yet they're building 60 more nuclear plants on the books now. And 400 of these facilities in existence right now. How sane is that? And what about nuclear weapons? Enough nuclear weapons to mathematically destroy all humanity 12,000 times over. What rational thought went into that equation? Isn't 10 or 20 or 30 times over enough? No, 12,000 times over. In the current proxy wars happening in Ukraine and Syria, Yemen, and other places, these are ramping up as there's not enough to go around, and the global power structure, like mafia families, start to infight amongst themselves. These situations are going to escalate. They are escalating. And all of these are conditioning to, they're contributing to biosphere implosion and economic disintegration. It's happening now. It can't not happen. You can't have an economy when the biosphere implodes, because the only real wealth is natural wealth. Dollars are not wealth. Many people are starting to realize that. Maybe for a short period while the pyramid continues, the pyramid scheme, the facade of industrialized society. But dollars are not wealth. Only natural resources are wealth. And oil's not enough for us to live on. There's enough oil to continue the economic engine of industrialized, destructive society going for a while longer. But the other resources are now completely imploding. And without those resources, oil means nothing, dollars mean nothing, and the notion of perpetual expansion on a finite planet with finite resources, how simple could it be that that cannot continue, that will not continue, period. Again, moving toward World War III, as the power structure has no more cards to play, that's always their final hand, global conflict. And it's very difficult to know who's pulling what levers, who's collaborating with who. It's very difficult for us to know. Truly impossible. We do have a Russian jet that was shot down, a Russian helicopter that appears to have been hit with a missile from a U.S.-supported rebel. The sparks are flying. They're certainly flying, and it's impossible, again, to know who is really behind what completely. But it's safe to say that those in power absolutely have no interest in the common good. They exist for their own ends, period. And they will continue their assault on the planet, life on the planet, and the people on the planet until those people wake up and draw a line in the sand and say enough. Until those people start learning what's happening around them and exposing those responsible for the crimes going on. And that list is long, by the way. The list of people who are responsible for the crimes that are happening or hiding the crimes that are happening is very long indeed. In fact, in many ways, we can count so much of even academia and media for being accessories in so many crimes that are happening around the globe. Climate engineering being one of those crimes. When we have people in academia who are lying, meteorologists, climate scientists, agency officials who are lying to hide these crimes to protect their paychecks and pensions, they become an accessory to that crime. And those kinds of people, their public emails should be exposed. Whatever act they've committed to help hide the crimes. And a stunning example, again, is NASA, employees of NASA who, as I went over in previous shows, who designed programs to teach children that the toxic aerosol spraying in their skies that are part of the GeoEngineering solar radiation programs, toxic spraying that's giving children autism, respiratory disease to everyone else. For a NASA employee to teach children those very harmful spraying trails are harmless, that's a crime. It should be exposed as such. And it's up to all of us to help expose these people. Do it peacefully, do it legally, but do it. Absolutely do it. Find their public email and whatever part they've played in hiding this, distribute it to social media so that these people who are these accessories, so their cages can be rattled by the entire population. And on the weather, by the way, and again, without the climate, without the weather, without a functioning climate system, it's game over. It's game over. And that's why I talk so much about the climate engineering. That's why I focus so hard on that issue. It doesn't mean there's not other important issues. GMOs, vaccinations, the totally out of control power structure, so many important issues. But if the planet doesn't support life, that's the end of the road, period. And we are on the fast track to just such a planet. And again, if you don't believe it, you will. And those who are still convincing themselves that there's nothing wrong with the forest, that we don't need trees, we can cut them all down, poison the planet, that's simply not reality. Not reality at all. So what do we have happening right now climate-wise? We have completely engineered snowstorms. Number 3 is happening now. Winter Storm Kara. So I snapshotted today, and anybody can find this at geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column. I snapshotted the current conditions on Tuesday, the 24th, and for Reno, Nevada, and Carson City. Both locations showed 50 degrees in snow. Now, how can it snow at 50 degrees? Have the laws of physics changed? This is simply so obvious that people need to wake up and face reality. They're chemically nucleating rain to create the illusion of winter, to keep the division going, again, with the true state of the climate. And it's worked very well. It's worked astoundingly well. So many people are willing to accept these completely engineered winter snowstorms as natural. And if you doubt this is going on, and so many people do, because so many people have been so well trained to believe that there's no way man can influence the weather, how ridiculous is that? What a ridiculous notion that man couldn't influence the weather. Even if people have bought the lie that what we see in the sky is just harmless condensation, which is ridiculous. It's the biggest lie ever perpetrated on humanity. And it doesn't take much looking to prove that lie, because we have film footage of these aircraft spraying at altitude, up-close photographs of the nozzles. We have lab tests to show this material is coming down on us. We have 750-page congressional documents. We have U.S. military documents like Owning the Weather. We have congressional documents from 2013, 2014, global governance documents. I could go on and on. So if you convince yourself that this is just condensation, even if that was true, and it's not, if you cover the entire horizon with whatever this material is coming out of the aircraft, do you think that that's not going to change the weather? What an absurd conclusion. Of course it changes the weather, radically changes the weather. And if you believe that you can't chemically nucleate a rainstorm into a snowstorm under a multitude of conditions, you haven't done any research. Simply search Chinese scientists create artificial snowstorm, because the Chinese, again, had loose lips. They announced they were doing this, and mainstream media covered it. They did $1 billion worth of damage to Beijing from their heavy, wet snow. When you nucleate moisture at far above freezing temperatures, you have a very unnatural frozen precipitation that occurs. So this is what's happening, and it creates a lot of headlines, and that's what they want. So right now, while we have, quote, Winter Storm Kara, and they name these storms to keep the theater at maximum, the paid liars at Weather Channel, and that's exactly what they are. If you watch Weather Channel with any knowledge of what's going on in the skies above, and you look at the way they try to explain the completely ridiculously unnatural is natural, it's clear that these people know the kind of deception that they're spreading. So while we have this Winter Storm Kara going on, do we see any word at all about, oh, by the way, Arctic ice is at all-time record lows for this time of year? Yes. How many headlines do we see about that? All-time record low. Not a word. Not a word. All we see is headlines like, I believe it was the 18th or 19th of November, Chicago experienced its biggest November snowstorm in 100 years. That's the headline we see, because that's the message they want sent now, to create the climate confusion. So people don't really know what the state of the climate is, because that headline looks impressive, doesn't it? Chicago has record-breaking November snowstorm. But you don't see a lot of talk about the fact that Chicago is predicted on Thanksgiving Day, fully a week after this record snowstorm, to have rain at temperatures pushing 60 degrees. A week further into the winter season, and they go from a record-breaking snowstorm to rain at almost 60 degrees, something you might expect in August. Nobody says much about that. Nobody says much about the Arctic ice being at all-time record lows right now. Nobody says anything about the Arctic Ocean being 25 degrees above normal. And these are cataclysmic figures. Absolutely cataclysmic, because that releases methane. Methane's filling the atmosphere right now. And the climate engineers, their acts are increasingly desperate as they whip up these snowstorms. And we have previous records of these types of snowstorms, by the way. And one of the most extreme examples I've cited before, Amarillo, Texas, May 1st, 2013, 100-degree record temperature on the ground, snowed the next day. Anybody who thinks that that's a natural occurrence needs to seriously recheck their reality. Now, in regard to these quote-unquote winter storms, they're completely different from any historical quote-unquote winter storm. Now we have the Weather Channel paid liars trying to explain why we have a, quote, warm side to the winter storm and a cold side, because the winter storms are typically now fueled with moisture right out of the record warm Gulf of Mexico. How in the world does that happen? And we have a large band of ice storm between this warm Gulf moisture and the quote-unquote snowstorms. Since when? And why is that happening? Because the chemically nucleating material in that transition zone between the very warm precipitation from the Gulf and the core of the ice-nucleated engineered storm, the band in between those two zones is where the chemically nucleated material is actually falling to the ground before it sets up. That's exactly what's happening. And those at the Weather Channel go around and around trying to explain why all this bizarre stuff is occurring, why the weather whiplash is occurring, why it's 60, 70, 80 degrees one day and snowing the next. Because their job as cowards, as paid lying cowards, is to hide the reality of what's unfolding. And they're the kind of people that we should post their public emails and exactly what they're participating in so the public can let them know what they think. It's perfectly legal. We need to do it. We need to expose these people so that they know once the public fully wakes up to this issue that people like them will be held as accomplices in these crimes and hopefully put on trial. That's where they need to be. Legally held accountable in a court of law. Period. So, again, as we have the third winter storm unfolding with the warm side and a cold side to the storm, ice storm transition in the middle as the nucleating material hits the ground and sets up, this is exactly what's happening. And we know a lot about chemical ice nucleating material, by the way. For those, again, who don't believe this, I simply challenge you to search engineered snowstorms. In our articles, a number of our articles at GeoEngineeringWatch.org, we show lab tests of what happens when you drop a few drops of chemical ice nucleating material into a vessel of water. It freezes it instantaneously. Ice nucleation is a very intriguing science, and we have patents from organizations like NASA. Chemical ice nucleation for weather modification, for exactly this purpose. Why would we have a patent if it's not going to be used? If the Chinese can do it, do we think that the U.S. military that's 10 times bigger and exponentially more advanced can't do it? And if we see temperatures of snow falling at 50 degrees today, or on Tuesday, November 24th in places like Carson City and Reno, how many more dots do we need to connect to build this picture? And how long will people stay asleep at the wheel, going about their business, pretending all of this is going away? It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. And what's happening in the Arctic right now, it should be headlines everywhere, is a true global cataclysm that's unfolding. I stress again, while they're showing the Donald Trump theater, the Ben Carson theater, the Hillary Clinton theater, and creating all the division they can from every single news channel against the Republicans this, the Democrats that, and all the other ways they divide and conquer us, while they're doing this, global cataclysm is unfolding in the Arctic. As the Arctic ice implodes, the Arctic Sea will heat radically fast. That happens because the ice has a very high albedo. It reflects 90% of the sun's incoming thermal energy as the ice implodes, and there's many reasons for this implosion. Many. A lot of people, even in the anti-geoengineering community, don't want to face the fact that there's a lot more damaging the planet than just climate engineering. But, unfortunately, everyone in the climate science community, to this point, is unwilling to admit to the geoengineering elephant in the room, which is, mathematically speaking, the single greatest environmentally destructive factor of all. So we have, again, plenty of denial to go around. But the bottom line is, as this ice implodes and the ocean heats and the methane thaws and releases from the seafloor, migrates to the surface, enters the atmosphere, it's covering the planet like a layer of glass. Nighttime low temperatures are rising twice as fast as daytime highs. It is happening. And the only thing hiding much of what's unfolding is engineered snowstorms like that which I just went over. And I encourage people, again, if you go down in the recent column of GeoEngineeringWatch.org, I documented this storm. Didn't want to do this post when it happened, but I documented this because it needed to be covered. I post maps that will make it very clear this event shouldn't be happening. It should not be happening. Just like the event on October 4th, 2013 in South Dakota where 100,000 cattle were killed from an engineered snowstorm shouldn't have happened. Those maps are available on GeoEngineeringWatch.org also. Maps which I screenshotted when it happened because I didn't think they would be online very long, and indeed they weren't. In that particular case of an engineered snowstorm in South Dakota where 100,000 cattle were killed, cattle that are used to cold, it was snowing at about 40 degrees, and at the exact time that this lethal snowstorm was happening, it was 85 degrees and raining in Chicago, and it was 89 degrees and raining in Kansas City, a stone throw away. How in the world on October 4th could you have a snowstorm that would kill 100,000 cattle with incredibly warm temperatures in the surrounding region? How is that possible? The same way that we have engineered events happening all over the globe, the same way as we press on, in fact, toward upcoming conferences on climate, like the Paris Conference, which is where a lot of backdoor deals will probably be made. In regard to engineering cool-downs, I ask people to consider this. Is it just a coincidence that in previous climate conferences, like Cancun and Copenhagen, is it just a coincidence that at both of those conferences there were record cold temperatures at those conferences during the conference, while there was warmer than average temperatures in the surrounding regions? How can that be? That's not a coincidence. That's a demonstration of their power during the course of the conference to help them make backdoor deals, to twist arms, to force countries to comply with the global climate engineering juggernaut of insanity, total insanity. And is it just a coincidence that after these conferences, aluminum futures went up some 25%? Is that just a coincidence when aluminum is a primary element named in numerous geoengineering patents? No, it's not a coincidence. This picture is very clear if people would simply take the time to gather the pieces and put them together. And the power structure is too heavily invested in climate engineering to turn back. They're not going to turn back. I get a lot of emails from people asking me this: why would they do this? Why would they do this? Why wouldn't they make it rain over California? Why would they cause a drought? And that's people that are still under the delusion that the power structure is there for the common good. That couldn't be further from the truth. People need to wake up to that fact. As I went over last week, all the wars that had started from World War I being triggered from the intentional voyage of the Lusitania into German-controlled waters so that they knew it would be sunk, and they knew that would be a catalyst to bring populations into supporting the war. Same thing in World War II with Pearl Harbor, that our power structure made sure would happen, in fact. Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin, same thing. Saddam Hussein after 9/11, even though he had nothing to do with it. And there's a lot of wars, smaller scale conflicts in between. This is business as usual. So for those who feel, or they feel perplexed at why the power structure would drought out their own population, not only are populations of the globe at this point expendable to the power structure, but populations around the globe are an increasing liability to the power structure. That's absolutely clear. And populations around the globe are under all-out assault by the power structure. And it's not a coincidence on that theme that when we're given vaccinations that contain mercury, various forms of mercury in those vaccinations, and now we're all inhaling aluminum, there's no question about these two facts I just stated. There's no question. It's documented to such a degree that there's virtually no debate in either case. We have lab tests to prove what's coming down in the air column, the amount of toxic heavy metal, aluminum being a primary metal. Every human test subject tested is off the scale with aluminum. We know the vaccinations are in the mercury's in the vaccinations. So when you combine those two metals, in the case of mercury and aluminum, you get what's called synergistic toxicity. The combination of mercury and aluminum can increase overall toxicity by as much as 10,000%. Now, that's unimaginably toxic when those metals are combined. Is it a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. Is it a coincidence that many of the independent scientific researchers that have exposed the dangers of the mercury in the vaccinations have died in the last year? Very untimely deaths? If you don't believe me, look it up. Look it up. Is it a coincidence that in the case of climate engineering, former Bush aide John Wheeler was seen outside the Pentagon in 2011, reportedly saying he was going to blow the whistle on the climate engineering insanity? And he was found in a landfill 2 days later, obviously dead. Is that a coincidence? No. This is the big league. And those in power are not going to stop unless populations around the globe stand up, raise awareness to the point where our military, who is helping those in power to carry out these crimes against their own populations, we have to have our U.S. military brothers and sisters on our side. In order for them to be on our side, they have to wake up and look at reality. They have to remember the oaths they have taken to protect the Constitution and the populations, by the way, and their own population from all threats, foreign and domestic. We need our military to remember this. We need our law enforcement officials to remember that they have an oath as well to protect their populations. Because as the power structure tries to lay down laws that label those who try to tell the truth as terrorists, anyone who would carry out that law is committing the ultimate betrayal, not just to morality or society or to their own children, but to all life on the planet. How can people carry out laws like that or orders like that? Everyone needs to look in the mirror. Our military brothers and sisters, our law enforcement officials need to look in the mirror. Ask yourself why you're here. We need you to take a stand for what's morally correct. A stand for the greater good, for the common good, or we will soon have nothing left to salvage. Virtually nothing. And those officials or agency people that are listening now, I appeal to you. Ask yourself why you're here. Why are you here? And do you really think your paycheck and pension is going to matter much longer? Because it won't. It won't. At this late hour, when the sand in the hourglass is indeed running out, and it is, what is stopping you from taking a stand for the common good? Taking a stand that would allow you to look your children in the eyes, to look yourself in the mirror, and know that you did the right thing in these final hours, in this late hour, I should say. And if everybody in a position to make a difference tried, and that's all of us, by the way, because we can all make a difference. All of us can help to start the landslide of awareness, to break the dam of insanity. And if we expose climate engineering, every single person around the planet would know that they have been irreparably damaged in a lethal experiment by a power structure that doesn't give a damn about them. And that includes all military families, military children, children of peace officers, all of you have been exposed to irreparable damage by a power structure that is completely out of control with no regard for any of our futures. We all have to face that fact because that's absolute reality. The lab tests prove it. Available data proves it. We have mountains of data. We're getting close to hopefully taking legal action in Canada and the U.S. Our attorneys team is growing. And the point of taking that legal action, even though we know we're entering a legal system that is completely rigged from top to bottom, once that credible filing is done and through the discovery process and the media coverage that would have to occur with that, that will put a big enough light on this issue to put a crack in the dam so the population understands this issue is real. It's absolutely real. And all these other peripheral issues that we see happening are related to this issue. From the conflicts in the Middle East, the drowning out of those nations that now have refugees pouring into every other country, creating the cover for these events that seem to be so perfectly timed for the power structure to carry out their agenda of locking down on civil rights, passing provisions like the Trans-Pacific Partnership and doing whatever in the hell they want, while the population remains ambivalent without taking any action. All these events are connected. But with the climate engineering issue especially, day in, day out, whatever else you're doing, you're breathing what they're spraying. Make no mistake about that. It's poisoning, contaminating everything, completely derailing the weather. I'm asking people to investigate. That's all. I'm not asking anybody to believe me and to understand that whatever other fight we face, as the walls crumble around us, as the power structure maneuvers, becomes ever more desperate with the proxy wars and the utilization of refugees as cover to put the fear in everybody with things like 9/11 that, again, data makes clear the official story is complete nonsense. That issue was a tool of the power structure as well. I encourage anyone who cares about the truth to investigate that. It's up to all of us to turn over every stone in the search for the truth. We have a responsibility to do this. It's not an option, it's an obligation. Period. And I stress again, for those that don't believe trouble's coming, You're going to be in for a rude awakening soon, and it will come quickly and unexpectedly as the power structure drops shoes when they have no other options left. What will you do between now and that time? Will you stay asleep, or will you stand and make your voice heard? Until next week, this is Dane Wigington for GeoEngineeringWatch.org.